Right now, at this exact moment, Iranian military officials are claiming their new artificial intelligence-controlled drone swarms have rendered traditional air defense systems obsolete. Israel's defense ministry just issued an emergency statement calling these claims dangerous propaganda designed to destabilize regional security. Two contradictory narratives from two adversaries standing on opposite sides of the most volatile military confrontation in the Middle East since the 1973 Yom Kippur War. One of them is lying, or both are concealing capabilities that fundamentally change how modern warfare works in 2026. Let me walk you through exactly what happened. On Tuesday, March 24, 2026, at approximately 1430 hours local time, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps released footage showing what they describe as autonomous drone swarms conducting coordinated strikes against simulated air defense installations in the Dasht-e-Kavir Desert testing range, roughly 280 kilometers southeast of Tehran. The video, verified as authentic by independent satellite imagery analysts at Aurora Intel, shows approximately 40 small quadcopter-style drones, operating in synchronized formation patterns, executing what military analysts call cooperative engagement tactics, without apparent human control. At 1520 hours, Iranian Defense Minister Brigadier General Mohammad Reza Ashtiani appeared on state television claiming Iran had achieved revolutionary breakthrough in autonomous warfare technology that neutralizes Zionist air defense superiority. 30 minutes later, at 1550 hours, Israeli Defense Forces spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari posted on social media calling Iran's demonstration theater designed to intimidate and stating that Israeli air defense systems are fully capable of defeating any drone threat Iran can deploy. At 1630 hours, the Pentagon released a brief statement through U.S. Central Command acknowledging awareness of Iranian testing activities but declining further comment, which defense analysts interpreted as significant given that American silence typically indicates genuine concern rather than dismissal. By 1800 hours, three separate think tanks, the Institute for the Study of War, the Royal United Services Institute, and the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, had published preliminary assessments suggesting Iran's demonstration represents either a meaningful capability advancement or an exceptionally sophisticated deception operation, but determining which requires technical analysis that isn't yet complete. To understand what's actually happening here, you need to understand three distinct weapon systems and the technological challenge they create when combined. First, the drones themselves. The units shown in Iranian footage appear to be modified versions of the Shahed 171 reconnaissance platform, which is Iran's domestically produced derivative of the American RQ-170 Sentinel stealth drone that Iran captured in 2011 after allegedly hacking its guidance systems and forcing it to land intact. These aren't the large Shahed 136 kamikaze drones Iran supplied to Russia for attacks against Ukrainian infrastructure. The 171 is a smaller platform with roughly 2-meter wingspan, electric propulsion providing approximately 90-minute flight duration, and payload capacity of about 2 kilograms, which is sufficient for small explosive charges or electronic warfare equipment, but not for significant explosive effect. What makes these platforms dangerous isn't individual capability, but collective behavior. Second, the artificial intelligence control architecture. According to technical analysis from autonomous systems experts at the Center for New American Security, the footage shows behavioral patterns consistent with what's called swarm intelligence algorithms, where individual units follow simple rules, maintain minimum separation distance, converge on designated targets, avoid obstacles that create emergent complex group behavior without centralized control. Dr. Paul Shara, former Army Ranger and Vice President at the Center for New American Security, analyzed the footage and stated that the coordination patterns demonstrated are consistent with commercially available swarm software packages that any reasonably capable engineering team could implement, but the scale of simultaneous coordination, 40 units operating in contested electronic warfare environment, represents sophistication that very few nations have demonstrated in field conditions. I torstes sap mining shiwets den first up mar in dure third. The electronic warfare integration. Multiple frames of the Iranian footage show what appear to be mobile jamming units positioned around the test range, suggesting Iran tested drone swarm operations in deliberately degraded GPS and communications environments, which is critical because most existing counter-drone systems depend on either jamming drone control links or spoofing GPS signals to disrupt drone navigation. If Iranian swarms can operate effectively while experiencing heavy electronic interference, that neutralizes the primary defensive technique most air defense systems employ against drone threats. The strategic significance is that Iran appears to be developing asymmetric capability that exploits fundamental weakness in expensive Western air defense architecture. Israel's Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow systems cost billions of dollars in fire interceptor missiles that cost anywhere from $50,000 for Iron Dome Tamir interceptors to $3 million for Arrow 3 exo-atmospheric interceptors. Those systems excel at intercepting ballistic missiles, rockets, and artillery shells, high-value targets traveling predictable ballistic trajectories. They perform poorly against low-altitude, slow-moving, unpredictable targets like small drones, especially when those targets arrive in coordinated swarms that can saturate defensive systems. If Iran deploys 40 drones simultaneously against a single Iron Dome battery, that battery has to engage each drone with an interceptor missile, creating cost-exchange ratio where Iran spends perhaps $200,000 on 40 cheap drones to force Israel to expend $2 million in interceptor missiles, and that's before considering whether the battery even has sufficient magazine depth to engage 40 simultaneous targets. Comparative analysis shows this mirrors challenges the United States military is currently addressing. The U.S. Army's Indirect Fire Protection Capability Program and the Counter-Small Unmanned Aircraft Systems strategy both acknowledge that existing air defense systems designed for Cold War ballistic missile threats are fundamentally mismatched against proliferating drone swarms. Ukraine's experience in the ongoing conflict with Russia demonstrates that even relatively primitive Iranian Shahed 136 drones cause disproportionate defensive burden, despite being slow-moving and easily detected, simply because intercepting each drone with expensive missiles or dedicating scarce fighter aircraft to drone hunting creates unsustainable cost dynamics. Here's why this matters strategically and why both Iran and Israel are making contradictory claims right now instead of simply ignoring each other's statements. From Iran's perspective, demonstrating advanced drone capabilities serves multiple strategic objectives simultaneously. First, it provides asymmetric answer to Israeli air superiority. Israel's Air Force operates F-35I stealth fighters, F-15I long-range strike aircraft, and sophisticated intelligence surveillance reconnaissance platforms that give Israel overwhelming conventional air power advantage over Iran. Iran cannot compete in traditional air combat, so it invests heavily in asymmetric capabilities, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, proxy forces, and now autonomous drone swarms that threaten Israeli targets without requiring Iran to develop expensive conventional air force that would lose air-to-air engagements anyway. Second, successful drone demonstrations strengthen Iran's negotiating position in ongoing nuclear discussions. By showcasing conventional military capabilities that threaten Israeli security independent of nuclear weapons, Iran signals it possesses multiple escalation pathways and isn't solely dependent on nuclear deterrent for strategic influence. Third, this creates technology export opportunity. Iran already supplies drones to Russia, Hezbollah, Hamas, and Houthi forces in Yemen. Demonstrating AI-controlled swarm capabilities creates export market for Iranian military technology, generating revenue while spreading Iranian military influence through client states. Fourth, domestic political considerations matter. Iran's leadership faces internal pressure from hardliners who criticize diplomatic engagement with the West as weakness. Public demonstrations of military advancement allow Iran's government to show strength to domestic audiences while pursuing diplomatic tracks, managing political contradictions within Iran's complex power structure. From Israel's perspective, dismissing Iranian claims serves different strategic logic. Israeli military doctrine relies heavily on technological superiority and qualitative military edge to offset quantitative disadvantages against multiple adversaries. If Iran genuinely possesses drone swarm capabilities that neutralize Israeli air defense advantages, that fundamentally undermines Israeli deterrence posture. Therefore, Israel has strategic incentive to publicly dismiss Iranian capabilities regardless of private intelligence assessments, because acknowledging Iranian breakthroughs would embolden Iranian adventurism and signal vulnerability to Hezbollah, Hamas, and other Iranian proxies who might conduct their own drone swarm attacks. Additionally, Israeli defense officials need to maintain public confidence in air defense systems. Israeli civilians have been told repeatedly that Iron Dome provides comprehensive protection against rockets and missiles. Acknowledging that cheap drone swarms could potentially overwhelm these expensive systems would create public anxiety and political pressure on Israeli government, according to Dr. Yifta Shapir, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for National Security Studies in Tel Aviv. Israel faces a classic deterrence dilemma where admitting adversary capability advancements encourages adversary aggression, but failing to acknowledge those advancements prevents mobilization of resources needed to develop effective countermeasures. The United States occupies complex middle position. American military planners privately acknowledge that drone swarm technology represents genuine threat to traditional air defense architecture, which is why the Pentagon has invested billions in directed energy weapons, high-power microwave systems, and counter-UAS technologies. However, the U.S. also wants to avoid legitimizing Iranian capabilities because that could accelerate regional proliferation and create political pressure to provide Israel with additional military aid. The American non-response, acknowledging awareness but declining substantive comment, suggests U.S. intelligence assesses Iranian demonstration as containing elements of genuine capability advancement worth monitoring rather than pure propaganda worth dismissing. This echoes historical dynamics from the 1960s when the Soviet Union demonstrated anti-ballistic missile systems and the United States faced similar calculation about whether to dismiss Soviet claims as propaganda or acknowledge them as genuine capability, requiring countermeasure development. Then, as now, the correct answer was probably somewhere in between. Adversaries exaggerate capabilities to intimidate while concealing limitations, but dismissing all adversary claims as pure propaganda creates strategic blindness. There are three scenarios for how this develops over the next several months, each with different probability and different implications for regional security. Scenario 1 is continued incremental development without operational deployment, probability 35%. In this scenario, Iran's demonstration represents genuine research progress but not yet operationally deployable capability. The controlled test environment doesn't translate to combat conditions where Israeli electronic warfare would be far more sophisticated than anything Iran simulated, where Israeli air defenses would employ layered systems combining Iron Dome with directed energy weapons and kinetic gun systems, and where Israeli fighter aircraft could intercept drone swarms before they reach defended targets. Iran continues development, conducts additional tests, and gradually improves capabilities over the next 3 to 5 years, but doesn't achieve combat-effective swarm systems in near term. This scenario requires that Iranian engineers face technical obstacles they haven't yet solved, battery life limitations preventing long-range operations, targeting discrimination challenges, preventing swarms from distinguishing between military and civilian infrastructure, or communications vulnerabilities allowing Israeli electronic attack to disrupt swarm coordination even if individual drones use autonomous navigation. For this scenario to materialize, Israel would need to avoid provocative actions that create political pressure on Iran to demonstrate capabilities prematurely, and Iran would need to prioritize capability development over political theater. Scenario 2 is limited operational deployment creating tactical capability without strategic transformation, probability 45%. In this scenario, Iran achieves sufficient technical maturity to deploy drone swarms operationally but in limited numbers and specific circumstances rather than as widespread game-changing capability. Iran might supply Hezbollah with 50 to 100 AI-enabled drones capable of coordinated attacks against specific Israeli air defense batteries or radar installations, creating tactical complications for Israeli defenses without fundamentally shifting strategic balance. Israel responds by deploying countermeasures, additional short-range air defense systems like Iron Beam directed energy weapons, enhanced electronic warfare capabilities, and revised tactics emphasizing multi-layered defense rather than reliance on single systems. Both sides adapt and adjust, creating evolutionary arms race rather than revolutionary capability shift. This scenario requires technical maturation, allowing limited deployment, while Israeli countermeasures remain effective enough to prevent catastrophic failures. Regional tensions increase moderately but don't spiral into major confrontation because neither side gains decisive advantage. According to Michael Knights, senior fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, the most likely outcome is tactical capability that complicates Israeli operations without rendering Israeli defenses obsolete, creating another element of complex military competition rather than decisive breakthrough. Scenario 3 is rapid proliferation triggering security crisis, probability 20%. In this nightmare scenario, Iran not only achieves operational drone swarm capability but also proliferates technology rapidly to Hezbollah, Hamas, and Houthi forces, while these groups coordinate multi-front drone swarm attacks against Israeli air defense installations, overwhelming defenses and creating perception of Israeli vulnerability. Israel responds with preemptive strikes against Iranian drone production facilities, triggering escalation cycle where Iran activates proxy forces across the region, conducts ballistic missile strikes against Israeli strategic targets, and potentially attempts to close Strait of Hormuz, affecting global oil supplies. The United States intervenes militarily to support Israel and protect maritime commerce, creating risk of direct U.S.-Iran conflict. This scenario becomes likely if Iran achieves capability breakthrough, allowing mass production of capable swarms at low cost, and if regional tensions escalate to point where Iranian leadership decides demonstrating capability through proxy attacks serves strategic interests, despite escalation risks. The trigger could be Israeli strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities, major terrorism incident attributed to Iranian proxies, or domestic political developments in Iran or Israel, creating pressure for confrontational policies. Watch for 5 critical indicators over the next 60 to 90 days that will reveal which scenario is unfolding. First, Iranian production activities. Commercial satellite imagery providers like Planet Labs and Maxar track Iranian military industrial facilities. If imagery shows expansion of drone production infrastructure, assembly line construction, or stockpiling of components at facilities associated with UAV programs, that suggests Iran is moving toward operational deployment rather than remaining in research phase. Second, proxy force training activities. Intelligence assessments and regional reporting indicating Iranian Revolutionary Guard advisors conducting drone warfare training for Hezbollah or Houthi forces in Lebanon, Syria, or Yemen would signal proliferation intent. Hezbollah's Al-Manar television occasionally shows military exercises. If future footage includes drone swarm training that mirrors Iranian test patterns, proliferation is occurring. Third, Israeli defensive procurement. If Israel announces emergency contracts for directed energy weapons, short-range air defense systems, or electronic warfare equipment specifically designed for counter-drone missions, that signals Israeli intelligence assesses Iranian capabilities as genuinely threatening, requiring urgent countermeasure deployment. Fourth, American technology transfer decisions. If the United States announces provision of counter-UAS systems to Israel or accelerates joint development programs addressing drone swarm threats, that indicates American intelligence validates Iranian capability claims as serious enough to warrant substantial resource commitment. Fifth, Iranian follow-on demonstrations. If Iran conducts additional public tests showing larger swarm sizes, longer operational ranges, or more complex mission profiles, that suggests continued capability advancement rather than one-time demonstration achieving maximum current capability. I'm tracking this minute by minute because the implications extend far beyond Iran and Israel. If cheap autonomous drone swarms genuinely render expensive air defense systems obsolete, that reshapes global military balance, affecting conflicts from Ukraine to Taiwan to the Korean Peninsula. Every nation that has invested billions in traditional air defense architecture faces potential obsolescence. Every nation that can produce cheap drones and develop swarm software gains asymmetric capability against conventionally superior adversaries. Subscribe to this channel right now and turn on all notifications, because when the next development breaks, whether it's Israeli countermeasure deployment, Iranian proliferation to proxies, or actual combat employment revealing true capabilities, you need analysis that goes deeper than mainstream coverage. Hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment answering these questions. Do you think Iran's swarm demonstration represents genuine breakthrough or sophisticated propaganda? Do you think Israel is genuinely unconcerned or strategically dismissing capabilities they privately fear? Do you think this technology proliferates to non-state actors, creating terrorism implications beyond conventional military competition? I read every comment and want to know what you're seeing. The technology exists. The demonstrations are real. The only question is whether operational deployment follows research progress and whether existing defenses adapt faster than threats evolve. The next 90 days determine whether we're witnessing incremental capability development, an ongoing arms race, or fundamental disruption in how air defense works. Thanks for watching. The drones are flying, the defenses are calculating, everything could change.